Hey everybody, Adam Rogers here at the Power-Tek group. We just got this brand new beautiful piece of equipment in. It's the Greenlee 881 table bender. And a lot of people don't really know how to set one of these up or use it, so that's what we're here for today. Couple things to keep in mind when you're using this bad boy is you always want to do a pre-inspection. Make sure you got all the right parts and pieces. You got the right kind of cord because it runs off 20 amps. You're going to want to make sure you have a 20 amp GFCI receptacle when you're using it on site. You don't want to get this guy wet. Rust is bad. It is not your friend with all these steel components on it. It's very heavy. We've actually sprung for the one that has all of the different shoes and the sliders, so we can bend 2.5 inch, 3 inch, and 4 inch. And everything stores neatly in their own specified spots right on the unit. It weighs in with all the accessories and components at just under 1,200 pounds, so it is quite heavy to move around. But luckily it comes on these large rubber wheel casters, 2 of which will move around. 2 are stationary, just like a shopping cart. Easy enough, everyone can operate one of those. When everything is folded in and compressed, it's built and designed to actually go through a 32-inch doorway. So most sites should have quite adequate access to get this in. When you are hooking up your hydraulic hoses, it is important to only finger tighten these. They don't need to be super tight. They're very fine threads. You don't want to cross thread. Never put any wrenches or any sort of power tool on there to tighten them up. But you just want to make sure that they're all just snugged on, and that way you're not going to have any problems with hydraulic fluid spilling out all over you. So one more thing that we definitely want to check before we set this up is we're going to check and make sure that we are on a nice level surface. Because if you're not, it's going to throw off all of your angles and you won't get straight pipe bends. So it also comes with a convenient angle finder with a nice little magnet on the top here. You can attach it to your pipe and it'll just stay no matter what your angle is. So we're going to throw it on the side runners here. And you can see right there, it's pointed right at the 0. We know we're on the right level spot. And then we'll check it the other way to make sure, again, we're sitting right on 0. So we're in the shop, we've got a nice level surface. Make sure you have this as level as possible at all times. So the other thing, very important, on our wheels that move back here, we have our locking mechanisms. Very easy to operate with your feet. You just lock it in place, and that way you're going to ensure that while you're bending your conduits, your whole table bender doesn't start rolling away on you or move. Again, you want this as still and level as possible when you're making your measurements and you're finding your angles. So an important thing to check before you actually make any bends, you're going to want to check your hoses, make sure that there's no leaks in the hose, no bulges or anything like that. You've already checked to make sure that these are put on here finger tight. And if there's any leaks or anything like that in the hose or the connection points, don't use it because that's very dangerous. The hydraulic fluid could spray on you. You know, it gets hot, it's under a lot of pressure. Actually, up to 10,000 psi can be running through this hose at any given point. Okay, so if there is a leak, make sure again you take it out of service and don't use it. But you're definitely going to want to check the level of your hydraulic fluid, which, as we discussed, should be about 1 inch from the top of the viewing port right here, which is also your vented cap. Now, if the fluid level is low, you're going to want to actually replace some of the fluid with the approved Greenlee hydraulic light fluid, or an equivalent, also high-grade light hydraulic oil. No brake fluid. Definitely no brake fluid. It actually says right on it, caution, no brake fluid. Very important to keep that in mind. We mentioned the vented cap for when you're using the unit itself. When you're transporting it between job sites, it also comes with a non-vented cap, which of course, in the event of this tipping over, will avoid any hydraulic fluid spilling out and causing environmental harm. There's other things that you might want to consider familiarizing yourself with. The instruction manual for both this pumping system, for the hydraulic pump, and also for the bender itself. In here you will find a wealth of information, troubleshooting guide, and most importantly, all of your bends and your measurements for making offsets, 90s, you know, anything you want to make, 3-point saddles, 4-point saddles, it's all in here. Now, there is also a quick chart located on the armature here for your very basic bends. I think we should actually print off a few copies of these charts that are in the manual and laminate them and keep them right with the machine, just in case the instruction manual is not available for you at your job site. And if neither one of those can happen, you can actually look up both of these manuals online in PDF form, so you can always look at it on your phone. Okay. So this Greenlee 881 bender, there's a lot of very heavy parts on it, and you're not supposed to set it up yourself. You could get hurt. There's lots of crush points, pinch points. So I'm going to have Joel Shepard give me a hand setting this whole thing up. So we're going to grab this by the armatures. I'm going to first twist this out of the way a little bit, and we're going to lift. So we've got to make sure that our hose doesn't get caught in the sides. Thanks for the assist, Joel. Right. So now that we've got this stood up and in place, it's very important to remember to put our locking sliders into place, and then we insert the cotter pin to keep them from moving, and this will prevent the unit from tipping over. Okay, so when we lifted this whole armature up, the last person that was using this used a 4-inch piece of pipe. So we're going to have to change the whole setup. Now what we need to get is the ram lock and the safety pin. So we'll grab this as well. Joel, if you want to hang on to that. We'll move on up here. So in order to change your settings, as it's set into the 4-inch, we want to bring it all the way down to the 2-inch. So we're going to take this and we're going to spin it. So we're going to insert this into here. And you'll see that these side plates lock in to keep it from moving too far. It won't slide side to side. We'll hold that up and we'll insert our lock pin. Okay. And now what it'll allow me to do is come over here. So we're going to drop this down into manual mode, and we're going to make the ram travel go all the way down so that it rests nicely here. Okay, so we've just taken enough weight off. And that way we'll be able to remove our pins here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to release the pressure until this moves all the way down so our hole pins can line up with the 2.5 inch, because that is the pipe size we'll be bending. We'll just keep a hand up here. You don't have to worry too much, it moves pretty slowly. Start to slow it down a bit here. And I think we should be good. There we go, perfect. And then Joel, please insert our cotter pins, which we retrieved from our nice little magnet here for holding cotter pins when we're changing things around. So we just showed you how to lower the ram set. Alternatively, there is an option. If you look up at the top, the very top hole where you would set it up for the 4-inch, you can also, there's another yoke that you can switch out. This is the one we had in there, the single hole yoke, which from this position will bend 3.5 and 4-inch. Or you can switch out and use this yoke, which is 2.5 and 3-inch. That you can also be used from the top position. It's very easy to put on. you just hold it up into place here and you insert the slider pin. Yeah, give that a good whack. Sometimes one doesn't help. So we've removed our ram set and we're going to put it back into its holding spot. With this unit, there's a place for everything, so everything should be in its place. It's all labeled. You can see right here, the little sticker says the ram set hangs here. We've already featured some of the other things for your shoes and such, so make sure you put everything back where it belongs and then everyone knows what it is. Right in here is the storage for our sliders. We're going to open this up.
Lockable.
It's lockable. Specifically made for a number 1 or a number 5 lock.
3.5, 4, 3 inch.
And 2.5. So they're stored in their proper spot. So when you install this, you're going to want to make sure you find this label that says start with a little arrow. And that's going to be pointing towards the front of the bender at all times.
You want to verify that you have the proper shoe. Just because it's labeled doesn't mean the last guy put it in the right spot. So here we have our Greenlee 2.5 inch.
Now to go along with our slider, we're going to need our actual ram, which is located on my side over here towards the back. Some of the larger ones can be quite heavy, and I would definitely recommend having 2 people use them for lifting. But this is just a one-hander. It's pretty easy. I could do reps all day.
Sure you could.
No, you're right, Joel. I probably couldn't. So on each of these, you'll notice there's 2 holes. One of them is labeled for EMT, and the other one is labeled for rigid or IMC. So we're going to make sure that we install this so that we're using the EMT because that's what we're bending.
Rolling.
So we'll just lift this into place.
Line her up.
Put our pin through. And you'll notice these pins have this little safety feature where they automatically flare out. This means we don't have to have cotter pins that can be lost or stolen. So a little easier to keep track of everything this way. Now we also have to get the shoe. And this is where we can use the longer pin.
When we put the shoe, we want to always make sure that the overlapping insert is facing out.
Yes.
We want the back of this to line right up with our...
It's certainly more predominant on the 4-inch shoe, where you've got this big lip in the front. That always has to be towards the front of the bender. It's not as pronounced here, but it's not flat on shear like this. All right, everybody. As you may have pieced together from all this talk of 2.5 inch and setting everything to 2.5 inch, we're going to bend 2.5 inch conduit. Now, I've taken the liberty of marking the end of my conduit because we're going to do a stub 90 today. Now, when we're bending EMT with the Greenlee 881 bender, it's important to note that with EMT, you always need to leave a minimum distance from the edge of your saddle to the end of the pipe. Now, with EMT, it is always the same as the size of the conduit you're bending. So you're bending 2.5 inch conduit, you want to make your mark 2.5 inches back, which I will verify for you like this, just so you can see 2.5 inch minimum. If you're doing 3 inch, you're going to want to do 3 inches, 4 inch, 4 inches. I think you get the idea. Now, when you're doing rigid conduit, which we do occasionally do, you will get away with making your mark 2.5 inches back no matter what size your rigid conduit is. Because if you don't come back far enough, basically it will warp the end and it'll be all ovaled and oblonged. And then your fittings won't fit on. They won't be fittings at all. So, we're going to grab the saddle over here, which is in its convenient holder for 2.5 inch saddles. And we're just going to scoop it up under here like this. We'll get my lovely assistant Joel to push the ram back.
The shoe.
Yes, sorry, the shoe. I keep calling it the ram. I've heard it called several different things over the years. We'll insert our pin. And we're gonna slide this back so that we're lined up, our marks are lined up with the front of the saddle.
Saddle lip.
Now it's important to note when you're about to make your bend, you want to have no more than a 1-inch gap between your saddle and your slider. I like to have it perfectly tight right up against it, and that way there's no real room for error. Now I'm just gonna squeeze this down a little bit so it's seated in the shoe. And you'll see that this starts to raise a little bit. Okay, now we'll come and we'll check our markings. See, we had a little bit of movement here, so I'm going to release some pressure. And I'll take the weight off the shoe. Okay,
We're lined up. Yep.
we're lined up. Put a little more pressure back on that. And then we're going to come back here and we're going to secure the back of the pipe. You want this to be relatively close to your slider. And it's got a hand crank here. So it's important to not over tighten this. This is simply to keep your pipe level and sliding along and to keep a little bit of tension off the shoe. So again, we'll firm this up. Okay, and we're going to put our angle finder on, and we're right at 0. Right at 0. So we got a perfectly level pipe so that we know when we make our bend, when we see 90 degrees, that we actually have 90 degrees. So one important thing to note is that we have what's called ram travel. And if you look over here, we've got this little thing, it's like a measuring stick. Now, we've snugged our pipe up, we know we're at level, 0 degrees, nothing's moving, everything's firm. So we've looked up in our manual that we need a ram travel on, oh actually we have a chart right here. So if we look at 90 degrees,
EMT,
2.5 inch, we have 5 5/16 is our total ram travel. Now, that doesn't mean we just put our little rubber piece at 5 5/16, because that's only going to put us like right here. Obviously, that's not going to bend a 90. So we've snugged everything up, so now this is our 0 point. So we're going to take a tape measure, and we're going to put it up here, and we're going to put it pretty darn close to 5 5/16. That's a little over 5 1/4. It's perfect. If you don't have a measuring tape, get off my job site. You need it. You're bending conduit, for God's sake. So anyway, we're going to go about, we're going to start our 90. We'll make sure our hoses and everything are away from our pipe.
Can you make sure you have your glasses on for this part?
I do have my glasses on for this part. I am wearing my glasses, Joel. Thank you for your safety concerns, my friend. We only have one set of eyes. You got to protect them. So again, we've got 0 on our angle finder, and we're going to just start our bending now. So you can watch your angle finder, but you should also try and keep an eye on your ram travel. You want to find this little used condom ring, and when it gets right down close to the bar, you're going to want to make sure you're checking your angle. Okay. So we're just about 90, and our little rubber piece has just hit the platform. So we're going to move that up slightly.
So it doesn't get pinched.
So it doesn't get pinched in there. And another important thing to remember is spring back on your pipe. You get it when you're hand bending your 3/4, your 1 inch. It's going to happen on big pipes, and it's going to be even worse. So typically we know we need to bend these to about 94 degrees, and that will account for the spring back.
Let's try 93.
We'll try 93 and see what happens.
There you go.
So once that settles, yeah, we're sitting at about 93 degrees. So I'm just gonna try and ease this back a little bit so it's just in a resting position without actually releasing the shoe itself.
Still holding it.
Still holding it? Okay. This is why this is important to be a two-man operation.
There we go.
Okay.
We're off, and look at that. Spring back, look where you're at.
Spring back, put us right at 90 degrees. And we'll just take our angle finder, we'll put it back on this pipe over here. Make sure we're still sitting at 0, which we are.
There we have it.
And we bent our 90. So now we can release all the way. Just careful with your hands, you don't want them to get caught in anything.
Be careful with this thing falling down as well. This thing, as you release, can move. You release. Pull it this way.
Put everything back in its proper place.
Release a little more.
You always want to have someone grab the shoe so it doesn't slide in and out and land on your feet. There is a rear safeguard to keep it from doing that, but you never know. It could come off.
There it is. Stub 90. Stick your Liddell on there.
Right,
For a
perfect.
tape measure, make sure that's a
Make
stub.
sure we have our stub 24 inches, which we do. Excellent. Nice job, Joel. We really crushed that one.
Good job, Adam. You got this.
Okay, so we showed you how to bend a stub 90. Now we're going to go one step further and we're going to do an offset for you. We want to do a 15-inch offset, and we're going to use 30-degree bends. It's the easiest to remember because when you do 30-degree bends, just like in your hand bending with your 3/4, your 1 inch, it's a ×2 multiplier. So I've gone ahead and I've pre-marked out our pipe. I've gone back my 2.5 inches, and then from that point I mark back 30 inches because we want a 15-inch bend ×2, 30 inches. Now Joel has some helpful information from our manual here to help everyone else out with their math calculations.
All right, so inside our instruction manual, we have a few important tables. The one that we're going to be wanting to look for first is our ram travel because, you know, as we looked at for our 90-degree bend, for 2.5-inch EMT, which is this category here, which is what we're using, 2.5-inch EMT. For our 90, we had a ram travel of 5 5/16 inches. For our 2.5-inch EMT, to make a bend angle of 30 degrees, we want a ram travel of 2 inches. So once again, once we're snugged like this, we measure 2 inches up, and that's actually going to tell us how far we're going to go. We're not going to the 2 on this here. We're measuring 2 additional inches from the snug point.
So I've moved our little used condom ring down to about 2 inches from the top platform here.
The other table we're going to use here is our offset multipliers. As Adam mentioned, for 30 degrees, we have a multiplier of 2. If we were making a 45, we have a multiplier of 1.4. And what that means is for your distance between your bends. You have your first bend and your second bend, okay? And so you're going to be marking those here. So you can just have a cheat chart for 30 degrees. If you want to go 12 inches, you got 24. If you want to go 14 inches, you have 28. If you want to go 16, 32. So using this too, we can go 15 is between 14 and 16 halfway. We're going to get our 30 inches between 28 and 32.
So here's a pro tip. What I've gone ahead and done is I've made crosshairs So when I'm flipping my pipe after I make my first bend, I can throw my little torpedo level on there and make sure that my pipe is actually straight, because we already know that we're on a firm level surface. So if I've made crosshairs, when I flip it over, lining up our crosshairs to be perfectly level, we'll make sure our pipe is perfectly level.
We're going to go ahead and fire up the bend here with our first bend on our line right here.
So with our spring back, we know it's going to come back a little bit. We're only doing a 30-degree bend. We're going to bend to about 31 here. So we got 31, and now I'll adjust my little rubber stopper thing to be flat here with the base of this, and that way I don't have to even look at the angle. I can make sure my rubber stopper touches there, and we should be at 31 degrees. But definitely make sure you're using your angle finder.
All right, so now we're going to release the pressure on this. And we're still sitting right at 30 degrees, so that worked well. I may have to take this shoe off.
We do.
Release this over here. So that will allow us to slide the pipe forward.
Have the pin because I put it back in its place. Sometimes you want to just give this a good peg in here. Yeah, lock her down. One critical error we just made is when we adjusted, our line is behind the front of the shoe, so we're going to have to readjust to make sure we get the proper angle. Okay, tighten me up a little bit, please. Whoa. And we'll go back here and we'll make sure that we are level. Okay, tighten that chain vise and give me a little bit of pressure, please. Okay. Now, Joel, you want to take the helm and just bring our little piece of rubber right down to the bottom of the platform here. Oh, we can use that to check our level as well. Let's slow it down. Just jog it a little bit. And one more degree. Okay, that's 31. So now we can release some of the pressure using the manual release. That's good, and we're right on 30. We'll come to the end, and there we are at 0. So we've got a perfect offset, 30 degrees on both bends. Okay. we've already checked for level. Now we'll check our measurement. We're going to measure to the bottom of the pipe. You can give me a foot on that, Joel. And there we are, 15 inches. Perfect. Well, we showed you the two most basic bends that you can do, the offset and the stub 90. Everything else is just math. You got the books, you got the intelligence, we know you can do it. So go out on site, have some fun with it, and don't screw up too much pipe. Now that we're done bending, we're gonna take this apart, we're gonna fold everything down, put everything back in its place so it's ready for the next people to use.
Lots of charts in here, very special bending tables here, and talks how to do a saddle, 3-bend saddle, 4-bend saddle, even back-to-back U-bends. There's all the directions, the measurements, and then the charts to use with those diagrams. So you can really bend whatever kind of fancy bend you want to bend with this. We're not going to demonstrate all of them today, or it would be a very long video. But now we'll just show you how to take it apart.
So step one, we want to get this down as low as possible as we can. That way, there's less chance of it dropping and causing any damage. So we'll just seat it right in the shoe a little bit to take some of the weight. Okay, and now we should be able to pull this pin. Okay, now we want this as a 2-man operation. I will take this 2-inch saddle, our shoe, put it back in place. There we are. And we'll put our pin back in its place.
Next we'll take
Our slider, and it'll go back into the 2.5 spot. Close that down. As we mentioned, you can get locks that will go in here. It's designed for a number 1 or a number 5 style lock. Okay, now we'll release all the pressure, because we don't want the line pressurized while we're storing this in between jobs. And then we will pull our pins and flip our little disc up. And then we're going to slowly and gently lower that down into place. We'll unplug our cord, wrap it around so it's not getting tangled anywhere. The hydraulic oil well folds around, keeping this nice and tight. And that way, we can fit through that 32-inch door that I mentioned earlier. When you're ready to transport, you just release the brakes on the wheels, and you're good to roll. It's been really fun making this video. This has been the Tools on the Tools. We hope you had fun too. Stay safe out there.